The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, helping customers make the switch to solar for savings, energy security, and tax incentives. Learn more at northeast-solar.com.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, the city NEPM Calls Home is gearing up for its third annual Pride Parade this weekend. And we chat with organizer Taurean Bethea about his impetus for its creation, some of the amazing activities they have planned, and what the Pride Parade organization gets up to during other parts of the year that aren't Pride Month.
And local historian and linguist Wren Wood joins us to speak about how Herman Melville may have sounded. They're giving a talk about this very subject at Arrowhead, Melville's former home, but we'll get a preview of the lilts, lulls, and manners of speech for one of Massachusetts' most famous authors.
And NEPM's Asparagus Festival is almost upon us.
Yes, it is the dawning of the age of asparagus.
Hadley grass for all consumption.
But it turns out that the grass is definitely being grown on both sides of the river.
It's been asparagus every year since my father started this farm. It's really the only constant. You know, there was tobacco in there for a while too, but the only real constant was asparagus from day one here.
This is going to be a week-long lesson in how to speak American Polish, because we're going to talk to so many asparagus farmers in anticipation of NEPM's Asparagus Festival this Saturday in Hadley, and we're going to get to the debate between the Hatfields and the McCoys of asparagus and who's got the best soil.
The Hatfields and the Hadleys.
Yeah, the Hatfields and the Hadleys in this case.
The Battle of the H-Towns in Western Mass.
Yep.
But how do you correctly pronounce your last name?
Smiarowski.
Smiarowski, not Smiarowski.
Smiarowski. It's a back and forth.
SM, so it's Smiarowski.
A
The
lot of my-
Polish way would be Smiarowski.
I love that because I have a lot of Polish friends that are like, my last name is Kraskowski, but if you really say it in Polish, it's incomprehensible, insert here.
That's where the nickname Simmer comes in, because it's just simpler. How do you spell it? How do you pronounce it?
Call it Simmer, so.
What's your name?
I'm Teddy, the third.
And Bernie.
The second generation?
My great-grandfather came from Poland, started the farm in Montague. 4 brothers, 2 of them stayed there. My grandfather left 1950, Bernie.
Yep.
Started the farm here, had 7 kids. My father being the oldest, left the farm to work for the USDA. And Bernie here, the oldest, stayed with his 3 brothers following. Went from the 50 acres and growing it to how many now?
50 acres up to 700.
Whoa!
We increased. We had to. There's a lot of mouths.
A lot of mouths to feed. Yeah.
1,400% increase.
So tell us about your time here, Bernie.
I'm the oldest of the 4 on our farm. My brothers Ron, John, and Jim. We went to ag school, most of us, at UMass. My father started tobacco, a lot of cucumbers. He didn't like the dairy industry.
Yeah. Probably a smart move.
Yes, definitely. So he left Montague, bought this in 1950. Same year he married our mom. So they raised 7 kids. Then in 1989 he passed away at the young age of 64 from cancer. So that's when me and my 3 brothers really took over. We always grew asparagus. You know, we had the old Mary Washington varieties, but they weren't really good, disease resistant. Now there's much better yielding varieties, hybrids. My brother Ron married into the Zalowski potato farm.
Yeah, which is right down the street.
Right down the road here.
Zalowski. Trying to figure out how do you pronounce that? How do you spell
that
it?
That
one's complicated too, because it's like Slazlowski, but it's like the A. You pronounce it in a different place, and it looks like it's in the word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ronnie's father-in-law says, you grow potatoes for us, and you pack them, do everything. We'll just market them for you. And so we've been doing that since 2006. Around 18 years now, we've been growing, 600 to 700 acres of potatoes. Also grow a lot of strawberries. Asparagus is still very popular.
What is nice or difficult about growing asparagus?
It's very labor intensive, but that's just the nature of the beast.
Trying to find good help these days is tough. People learning about growing asparagus takes a couple years to establish the root. You're not going to get a first picking till 3rd year for a week, maybe. So it's very important to spend the money wisely, invest right, get a good variety, and then that 4th year in, you're hoping you're going to be getting a good yield, and then you're going to be getting a good early cash flow, which is the biggest thing with asparagus. First crop, depending on the weather, it's always about 1st of May. Once you start picking it, it's instant money, and that's going to help pay bills and invest in the farm.
Well, let's walk to where the magic happens while we learn a little bit more about your asparagus here at Smiarowski Farm on Main Street in Hatfield.
How many varieties do you grow now?
We grow one variety now. It's called Millennium. It actually
Millennials, geez, they're taking over everything.
Let me take a selfie.
Millennium.
Oh, yeah, I see.
So it was developed actually in Ontario, Canada. It's a great yielding variety. The head on the asparagus stays tight and firm. You know, usually asparagus likes light, sandy, warm soils. This variety you can grow in even wetter soils, and it yields extremely well.
Well, given a year like there was last year, I'm sure that comes in handy.
This year's starting off probably a little bit wetter than usual. It's still early. We just don't want to repeat last year.
I think we're going in the barn over here, right?
Yeah. The asparagus is laid out here on the table, and the employees will sort it, take out the thins, make bunches of thins. Some people only want the real thin asparagus.
Right.
That's a nice bunch right there.
We're going to have an asparagus bunching competition, as usual, at the Asparagus Festival this Saturday. And
That guy won it the first year.
Which guy's that?
My brother John.
With me by a second behind.
And he was second.
So it's about speed, it's about the look, because you want them all uniform height, and it's about the weight. What's the weight of a bunch that you want?
It's a pound, 1 pound.
It's a little more than a pound, right?
For us, it is. I mean,
Put more than a pound in.
Yeah. It's not like when I buy coffee, and now it's shrinkflation, as they call it. It's like slightly less than a pound.
Yeah.
going back to the contest, though, it's funny because, it said Johnny won it there that year, and it's more than just speed, it's quality. I mean, you look at this, the tips are perfect together. It's over a pound. They don't.
And you're eyeballing it with weight. Like you're just trying, like, this is how much a pound feels in my hand.
Look around, there's no scale here.
When you make thousands of them, you know how much.
Get used to what the weight
Yeah, you move it, you feel it, but I mean, you see there's no scale here. For years, it's just constant. Guys have different ways of doing it. This is called a cradle here. So some farms, they'll put each spear in a cradle, weigh it, cut it, and then it's usually just a little, half-inch off, cut it with a saw, and then it goes right in the box, and most get sold here. Local markets. I mean, we had one guy here from North Shore picking up a couple crates this morning.
Well, we make the run for fish, so they can make the run for asparagus.
Exactly.
You put it in water after you cut it off and bunch it, and it grows.
It still grows.
Absolutely. It'll grow a half inch to an inch in a day.
Mine doesn't last long enough. I usually put it in
you
water
eat
when I
it.
get there, and then I just eat it. But I'm going to try to monitor this now.
No, seriously. You put it in the fridge in some water or outside the fridge. It'll grow in there.
Wow, that's
And it's
cool.
gaining weight. So they're actually
Yeah, they're just soaking. Yeah, they have these wooden crates in there.
1 pound bunches in each crate. The price started high this year. We were getting $100 a crate. We just sold some today for $90.
So we should negotiate with our asparagus farmers, what we're saying. I see the farm stands and I'm driving around. I'm going to be like,
make sure
$6. I'm going to give you $5.50.
Don't do that.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Give the farmers their money.
How many acres do you have of asparagus here?
We only have like 3.5 acres. But when I was younger, we had 12.
The yields have gone up, so if you can have a smaller acreage.
You can't grow 100 acres if you can't sell it.
Right.
So definitely the history of the asparagus here too. Back in the day, it was these guys growing up at the farm, picking it before school or after school and after baseball games, whatever it was. It used to be out front where we sell it was the benches where everybody laid it out, and it was polka music on Saturdays and bopsy out there, and now it's a little different. We have a bigger crew doing it, trying to get it done quick so we can go plant strawberries now and do other jobs in the farm.
How many people do you have working here around asparagus season, helping you out?
We have 9 right now.
I know that a lot of farms in our area couldn't do what they're doing without migrant labor. How important is that to you and your organization?
We wouldn't be farming without them. That's how important they are. The U.S. citizens, Americans, won't do this stoop labor. We're going to pick 3,000 to 4,000 quarts of strawberries a day. We will never find people or kids to do that. It's what I did. We grew up. We did all the tough jobs, but now you can't find people. And without the migrant laborers, we'd be in trouble.
Your farm's name is Smiarowski, and that's not necessarily one of the standard American-ish names.
Right.
In case anyone.
English.
Exactly. So when you want to talk about immigrants being part of the labor force,
We are them. Yeah. We're immigrants from Poland.
And it's interesting to see how that cycle continues, and I wish more people could see that
Exactly.
in their own lives reflected. Yeah.
It's still a melting pot.
Talk about why it's so hard to harvest asparagus, like the process of picking asparagus.
You plant the root in the ground, comes up 3 years later. It's a crown coming right off the root. So that crown is not just going to shoot off one asparagus spear, it's going to shoot off multiple, say what, 5 more, a dozen.
Yeah.
But
It's maybe how many inches below the surface?
6 inches? Yeah, 6 inches. But as it's popping up, there's about 5 spears. So you might have one spear, and like say they call it grass is the nickname. It grows so quick like grass. You're going to have one spear, but below that you're going to have 4 or 5 more that are ready to pop. You want to take that knife and you want to insert it and break that spear off where it's not going to damage the other ones. So you're not just moving quick. You got to be careful, but it's constantly bending down, up and down, up and down. Every 18
doing
inches.
squats all day.
Yeah, 100%. And you can't be stepping on them. You got to watch where you're going. But
I feel like we gotta go see it.
All right, let's go see it. Let's go. It's only right across the street.
Also, so these are the ends that are trimmed off. So you clearly take those and make a lot of asparagus soup at home.
Soup. We're picking strawberries. You're on your knees and going down the row.
Yeah.
But asparagus, you're up and down constantly. So it's tougher.
There was an asparagus blight of sorts, right? That
Yeah.
was devastating to the local asparagus crop. What was it and when was it?
In the 50s, 60s, fusarium, a disease that attacks the root. But then with, modern technology, they're developing new, more disease-resistant varieties like the Millennium I told you about.
I'm not sensitive at all. It's just like everything bothers me and everything offends me.
Does it taste any way significantly different from the older varieties you used to plant?
No. Yeah, you can't really taste the difference. They might look better, but it still tastes the same. It definitely yields better.
So you mentioned the roots are under the ground like 6 inches, and they may have like 5 crowns that'll come up. You cut one of those when it's ready to go. Will that regenerate, that one that got cut? And about how many times?
There's one big crown, say like my fist.
Yeah.
There's little nodes on the crown, and the asparagus will come out of that node.
Broccoli kind of works that way, but on a much smaller scale.
Yeah. After the asparagus season is done harvesting, you still have to take care of it. The fern will grow out, and through photosynthesis, the sugars will be stored down in that root. That makes your next year's crop. Obviously a perennial, and it can last 20, 25, 30 years.
Oh, that's good.
we explained strawberries is a big crop for us. So past years we haven't fully taken advantage of harvesting all the way in. Some guys will go till July. Us, we see it as it can kind of hurt the crop. You don't want to over harvest. When it comes to be into June, it gets hot, asparagus grows, it seeds out. Nobody wants that asparagus where it's tough. And as you can start to see as we walk in the fields here, you see the different rows.
Oh, yeah.
You obviously don't want to step here because 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, yeah.
You want to step between the rows.
Look at, I stepped on one.
Way to go, Bernie. You already killed one.
Look at, this is a row and this is a row. The crown in the ground is expanding. This has been here for, 12 years. That's a big crown. And look at, this is from one crown. 1, 2, 3. They keep coming up, so you got to be careful where you step.
So there's one here that looks like it's 2.5 feet tall. How tall are they when you usually cut them?
8, 10 inches.
So about the size that we see them when we buy them in the bunches, right?
Sometimes they'll let the skinny ones grow out towards the end of the year, which we're getting towards the end. They'll let this grow out, fern out, and more will keep coming. But you can still pick.
And they let them fern out so that it'll bring the sugars to the root below?
Yeah, like that one there.
A healthy field, midsummer, you'll see it's 5, 6 high. Ferns are just exploding through the field.
That's awesome, because I've seen the fiddleheads turn into the ferns.
Correct.
But I have not seen the asparagus turn into the ferns. I'm going to have to come back here in the end of July and see how it looks.
That's so cool.
Yeah. What's your favorite way to eat asparagus, Bernie Smiarowski?
My wife coats it with olive oil, salt, and pepper, and puts it on the grill.
Correct.
That's the right answer.
That's my right answer. Okay, it's not the only one answer, but it's also my answer.
We grew up, my mother would make it for the whole family, either boil it. Then what became the favorite was breaking it in pieces and putting it in oil and frying it. That was very good.
What about you, Teddy Smiarowski? Or do you just
So,
hate asparagus at this point?
Growing up, like you said, I would always be at the farm, and Bob, she would always have it in the stove, and to me it'd be mush. I never liked it. It was her way, so I'd eat it, and if it's soup or if it's on the grill or whatever, cream asparagus on toast is in my eyes, go-to. Moving forward, talking about the Asparagus Festival, something new we're doing this year is our farm is going to do kind of a farm to table. So we've been there since day one. Always love going to Asparagus Festival, meeting the customers. We bring in flowers, asparagus, vegetables, whatever we have in season. And this year we're going to do a couple dishes. Going to let it be more of a secret, like to have you guys come out and see what we're going to have.
Can't wait.
It's not, you go there, and I think the big hit is the asparagus fries.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, Eslon, they kill it there every year. They do great. We love them coming out, and people, there's just a line across the common for it.
They ran out last year.
Yeah, so long a line that we were too busy working that I didn't get any last year.
That's great, and that's what you want.
How many crates did you sell last year?
It's 20-something. I got to look back at my
crates of
notes.
just
It was
bunch of
unbelievable. And we stayed
Times 24, what's that, 480 bunches?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And we stayed to the end, too. I mean, he's calling my father up, like, Dad, bring more. He's rushing them out there. Excited. I think this year they were talking about more people are going to be incorporating more asparagus dishes at the festival.
Which is great.
Because we were talking this time, there's so many different ways of eating it. Cook's Farm over there in Hadley, they have asparagus ice cream. People hear for that for the first time, they're like, it's not my regular.
Yeah. I'll pass.
There's actually been like a rollout of photos of my friends getting asparagus ice cream, and I'm just sort of like, I'm so happy for you.
I mentioned the great debate that Hadley asparagus, Hadley grass, is considered to be the primo asparagus, not only here, but of the world. The legends of the Queen of England receiving Hadley grass.
Exactly.
You Hatfield farmers on this side of the river, the Smiarowskis, state your case why this side of the river.
Back in the history, obviously, every town's different. Every town's known for something. In Hatfield here, once part of Hadley. Back in the day, this was a lot of tobacco in this town. So Hadley, that was the big crop over there. It was truly the asparagus capital of the world back in the day. To hear the stories, I went to the Queen of England, went to the President. I think Hadley kind of just maybe lost its name over the years a little bit. The asparagus died down, labor factor.
New Jersey started getting big into asparagus.
And then you have obviously trucking, and the trucking industry kind of changed the farming industry, and local was big back then, and now you could get in asparagus from Peru and California and Washington State, and it definitely changed over the years. In my eyes, I think we're very, very lucky to be living in the valley here. The soil is the soil is everything.
Premium.
So
some of the best in the world.
You have asparagus on Smiarowski's or up the road in Hadley, and it could be up in Conway, wherever. I think Valley asparagus, I like to throw the name to it. It's amazing. It can't be beat.
And the price, it's limited supply, but when we're getting $90 to $100 a crate, New Jersey's shipping into the Boston market for $60. Canadian asparagus is coming in for $60. And, we can still command, because it's Hatfield Hadley asparagus, and it's a premium. People love it. It just exceptional.
Well, thanks so much for taking so much time with us, you guys. We'll see you at the Asparagus Festival this weekend. I can't wait to try your secret dishes and stuff.
Are you going to try the bunching festival? You want to recruit?
I'd like to, if I have enough help that comes. We hope.
You're going to go for number one.
I am.
Right.
Yeah, bragging rights is nice.
Hatfield beats a Hadley in the asparagus bunching. I think they should reclaim the
Do you
title.
just move the trophy from one side of the river to the other side of the
Like
river?
the Stanley Cup.
In addition to grabbing some of the Smiarowski's asparagus at the actual Asparagus Festival on Saturday, they do have 2 farm stands in both Hatfield and Sunderland, so as to cover both sides of the river's hankering for the stalks.
We'll soon discover what Herman Melville's accent might have sounded like with Chicopee historian Wren Wood.
But next, bringing the local rainbow to downtown Springfield with Taurean Bethea of the Springfield Pride Parade happening this weekend.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
Pride Month is just around the corner, and kicking off the area's festivities for the month itself is the 3rd annual Springfield Pride Parade happening June 1st right here in downtown Springfield. Joining us are Taurean Bethea, founder and CEO of the Springfield Pride Parade organization.
Taurean's journey from his Springfield roots to the pinnacles of the fashion industry is a testament to his unwavering passion and commitment to fostering inclusivity and authenticity.
From Putnam High School class of 2000 to Atlanta, Georgia, where he would earn his his degree in fashion merchandising and beyond to LA, New York City, around the country, and the globe. Bethea's journey has seen him with prominent roles at Fat Farm and Baby Fat Clothing under the visionary leadership of Russell and Kimora Lee Simmons, Lacoste, Ralph Lauren, and the prestigious Italian brand.
Hermenegildo Zegna.
He did it with such a flair.
I know. I'm going to leave that in your words.
Okay, right?
You did it right.
Yeah, but after coming out in 2017 and the global upheaval of 2020, Bethea saw an opportunity to effect meaningful change within his community, which culminated in the launch of the Springfield Pride Parade organization, which is fully committed to celebrating diversity and championing inclusivity.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And honestly, thank you for starting a Springfield Pride. We mentioned you came out in 2017, which is a little late, but I'm assuming that in your youth growing up, either knowing or not knowing that you were queer, there were probably no pride parades in Springfield. You still had to go to Northampton, right?
Yes. But also too, it's my growing up, you didn't see it like that. It wasn't out there in the open, or there was whispers about, this person's this or this person's that. And you only thought about being gay as looking one way, flamboyant, and, So I think I just didn't feel as if this is just how my life is. So it wasn't until I got to New York to where I'm just like, oh, this is a community where there's so many different, the way people identify, whether they're masculine, feminine, or however. So then I'm like, okay, I can be gay without having to be, flamboyant or feeling as if who I was would change. So, yeah, so then I'm just like, okay, Springfield, I know somebody's out there. Wait a minute now. I know I don't come from the only non-gay city in the world. Something is not right.
That's Moscow, as we all know.
Also lies.
Right.
Total lies.
Every city's queer.
Yes, exactly. Just coming home and everything coming full circle, it became exciting to just create that space, and do it in a big way. Let's do it.
Did growing up like that influence you coming out really late also?
It did, because it was like a circle back to where you hear about kids in our hometown fighting depression, suicide, bullying, and all that stuff. And here I am just living my best gay New York life. We're just going to have a good time. And then you're like, you could do more. You could do something else, because there could be a kid out there that feels as if they have to be the stereotypical gay person and be flamboyant and be that. And if they don't fit that mold, then all of a sudden it's I'm going to stay in my shell then, because I don't want to be that. So I'm like, what can we do? What voice can I have to see some young kid? I don't have to jeopardize who I am as a person. I could still be me and still be out and proud without being too loud. It's that's so I just was like, let's go for it. If you could save one, we did our job, you know.
And especially important, I think, in Black and brown communities to see more of that, too. It's coming more to the forefront, but I also encountered strong Black queer communities during my coming out in high school. But it really shaped the way that I live now and the things that I want to encounter in my pride parades. So you came back to Springfield. Was it making a pride organization that brought you back to the area, or what brought you back to Western Mass from New York?
It was actually to launch the organization. We had a great contract with the Department of Health and Human Services of just someone leading this charge to speak directly to the LGBTQ plus community. Shout out to Commissioner Carlton Harris for, really putting the work out there and just saying your story could help. And you can do something. And I'm just one of those people to where if you give me the ball, I'm running. Let's do it. And then it was how do we make a big splash? How do we say something? And at the time, we're going through COVID. So it's it's just a weird time. If I could describe it, it was very gray. So it's how do we come out of this with some color, some excitement? And then I just started reaching out to my network hey, I have this idea of doing a parade. Would you be down? One of them being Mass Mutual, and they're like, if you move it to next year, let's do it. Because this was I think it was 21 where I was like, let's do it. But of course, COVID protocols were still in place. And they were like, if you move it, let's do it. We're going to get behind you with this being the first, which was mind-blowing to me. And then I think the organization, we wanted to put it out there because by then we had like a summer program. We were going to work. So it's like, how do we get more people to pay attention to us? And the true aspect of Pride, where it started, was like, all right, we got to make some noise. Like we got to get your attention and then we can start the conversation. So it's like, Pride Parade, let's go. And then year 2, I was like, oh, what happened? Like, what did I do?
What did I do?
Yeah. I was like, man, that's it. It's making a big splash to have a really good conversation.
I know we're supposed to talk about the Pride Parade and the events that are going around it on Saturday, June 1st, with the CEO of Springfield Pride's organization, Taurean Bethea, who joins us in the studio. Yeah. But I want to know, you work with like Ralph Lauren, you work with Russell Simmons and all these fashion icons. Also, 2-time Oscar winner from Springfield, Ruthie Carter, works in fashion.
Fashion, yeah.
What is it about Springfield and fashion?
Oh, one thing that I always tell people is Springfield runs the world. I'm telling you. I have traveled many places, and you pull back a layer, and it's like, I'm from Springfield. And you're like, wait, what? Like
Kurt Russell?
Yeah, Kurt Russell. And Linda Perry.
Oh, yeah.
Is
Right.
also from
Four
Springfield.
Non-Blondes.
Yes. Yeah, Springfield does run the world. Ruthie actually, she's a costume designer, and I think she started off as a stylist.
Yeah.
I'm not that cool, so I'm more so like...
That's not what your resume says.
We think you're pretty cool.
Oh, well, thank
you.
So I was more so on the merchandising and like the rollout of products and stuff like that. Nobody's holding me to designing anything.
Okay.
So I'm cool on that.
Noted.
My stick figures are questionable.
Fashion adjacent.
Yes, fashion adjacent.
But moving fashion forward.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
There we go.
Like that.
And moving forward like a parade, which will happen this Saturday, June 1st.
Yeah.
It's going to start at Stick and then go to Stearns Square. But there's a ball that happens on Friday night that is part of Springfield Pride.
There's a bunch of events that
Yeah.
happen
Yeah.
on Friday. It's
about-
like a Pride weekend.
It is a Pride
made
weekend.
here.
Absolutely. This is our 2004 U-Ball fundraising gala. It's based on the Met Gala. Wow, I really do have a lot of fashion tied to
We
this.
got to get
See?
Ruthie Carter here for this.
See, you're trying to...
Put it out there.
Okay. We've had her on twice, so you never know.
Put it out there. Yeah, so our theme this year is the Parisian Masquerade. So it's like, a masquerade ball in a Paris bistro, is where we're trying to go with it. And this is our opportunity to really talk about our programming and, raise some money for that program. So it's a big deal for us because I always tell people the parade is not our work. It's a celebration of our work. So the U-Ball allows us to display our work and really just back the youth, that are just here to be like, I just want to be me, have my back. Even this morning, we had our scholarship recipient hung out with us. Shout out to Ross Sharp. He's amazing. So we'll be awarding him at the U-Ball. So it's a great event for us to just really show the work that we do.
But that's after like the pride flag raising that happens at City Hall.
Yeah.
The U-Ball happens that evening. There's something else that happens
The
in
community
between.
panel.
There we go.
Yes, is Thursday, May 30th. Out of all the things we do, that's probably one of the most important events that we're doing this weekend because we're working directly with the youth and we're having a conversation about what they need, where they see the city. And the youth nowadays, I love it because they're like, okay, this is what is happening. They're very straightforward and like, this is what we need you to do. So it's good to get in front of them and just really help us build like this game plan and this strategy on, giving them the resources that they need. So, yeah, it's a lot happening. We're happy.
What are some of the things that the youth of Springfield need when it comes to support in the LGBT community around here?
I would say to begin with visibility.
Yeah.
I think visibility is a key point to starting the conversation, and then also just understanding. A lot of youth that we run into want to be involved in a lot of the things that, festivities and all that stuff. But it's like their parents are just like, nope, not on my watch. And it's just like, well, where does this come from?
And also like, oh, we're still having these conversations.
Yeah, like, seriously? That's the thing. It's like just that visibility and like I mentioned, that big splash, to where people may want to come down and see the performer or something. It's like, okay, well, now you're here. So listen, this is what we need from you, So it's just that conversation. If I could say anything they truly, truly need outside of visibility is just a start to the conversation of understanding who they are. and really what they need. Get past that old thinking,
Coming up, more with Taurean Bethea of Springfield Pride Parade as we hear a little of what they get up to when it's not June and hear about their headliner for the parade, the Queen of Bounce, Queen Diva Big Frida.
And later we'll discover how much sailor speak Herman Melville might have actually had when we talk with local historian and linguist Wren Wood.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM. We're speaking with the founder and CEO of the Springfield Pride Parade organization, Taurean Bethea.
Your programs with Springfield Pride organization deal with a lot of youth throughout the rest of the year, culminating in not just the parade, but that scholarship that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. But how does working with the youth year-round influence how you organize the parade itself?
Oh, that's a good question. And that's a tough question because I like production. And I hate to say, I'm like one of those Miranda Priestley type people.
Where are the belts for this track? Why is no one ready?
There will be no Frisians at the U-Ball. But I like it because now this year we actually started to bring in the students to just get their thoughts on, well, what do you want? And, they come up with some really cool things. And then we just open up the parade to any student or school that wants to march with us. But does it affect it? I don't know yet. Not yet. Because we're 3 years old.
Yeah.
So I think to set a foundation right now, the goal is to hand it off, to the youth and let them just fully, do their thing with it, I think is our goal. Once the foundation is set, we are passing that thing on. And I can't wait to kick my feet up and be like, well, I'm going to just show up.
Now we may need to put a couple more years on the
at least two more.
Well, speaking of that, how different is this third year from your very first year and what happened in that year? I remember hearing rumblings about it, knowing people were going, but finding out about the very first one, last minute, I'm like, wait a minute, Springfield has a pride parade.
What's different is I think just seeing what it's becoming, so I feel like we're settling into what this weekend is. The first year, when I tell you winging it, winging it, and just really understanding the process of it from permits to, staging to run of shows and all this stuff. It is a production, so it's can we just show up and wave our flags or dance in the street? No, you cannot. You cannot do that. And then we landed on the steps of City Hall, which I think was that was a moment, and then to see all the kids just dancing, it was a long, long day. That's what we learned too. Our first year, it's we can't go this long anymore. Because the kids are like, all right, yeah, let's go. We're going to 10, right? We're like, my legs don't even work anymore. So what are we doing? And I think that was that moment that showed how important it was. And then I'm like, let's go bigger. Let's go bigger. Let's become more effective in what we're doing. Let's do the panel, and let's really just structure this thing to be something special for the city of Springfield.
We're speaking with the founder and CEO of the Springfield Pride Parade organization, Taurean Bethea. It's going to kick off at noon from STIC, Springfield Technical Community College, and make its way to Stern Square in downtown. And there's a big, big name that is going to be associated with this that I didn't find out about until today. And as much as I love that I'm going to be at the Asparagus Festival, I'm bummed that I'm not going to be here for this.
Yes.
You got who?
We have our headliner this year, all the way from New Orleans, the Queen of Bounce, Big Frida.
Queen Diva.
If you listen to the album before Beyonce's most recent album, you know Big Frida. Take off the slow, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I went to go see her at Tipitina's in New Orleans, the one and only time I was ever there, and it was incredible.
It's a show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Whoa, I'm sweating right now. Yep. It is, it's a show, and I can't wait. I think this is our first time in Springfield, so we got to show out.
Because she's been in Northampton before. I saw her at the Iron Horse a couple of times.
Shout out to the Iron Horse.
The old Iron Horse.
Yeah.
Where the bathrooms were still in the basement, and you had questions every step you took down there.
Good times.
But her up on that stage with like her dancers and her DJ and everything, and just like every part of your body shaking. She's such a good show.
So much fun.
Yeah,
What else is going to happen?
We have so many performers from the area. Seeing them on that stage, and they're putting together these amazing performances. And then we have our Vogue class from the amazing London St. Morta. So that's going to be awesome. Also from Springfield on the HBO hit show Legendary, which is bringing ballroom to the forefront. So we're happy to have London. London's also part of our DNA too. So we have such a strong crew. And then the amazing Ruby Monroe is our host. So Saturday is going to be fun. Yeah.
I love that there's a voguing class because ballroom is such a big part of especially Black queer culture, like Black gay culture.
Yeah.
And so there's something about a pride parade in an area that has a large Black and brown population, not to mention large Black and brown queer population, having that bit that's nestled within the community in the forefront. There's just something beautiful about it.
So happy you said that because the U-Ball, outside of our theme, our programming is actually showing the connection of ballroom to what our safe space program is nowadays. Because ballroom, it started as a safe space for, Black and brown queer youth. So it plays such a pivotal role in gay culture in general, so we want to show that story and show like what we're doing and how it connects to the origins of ballroom. So this is it's cool, because it shows people like the importance of what it is. So we're happy to display that. I can't wait.
Not just being out with your flags, but like having space to like move the way that your body wants to with the people that make you feel the most comfortable.
Yep, absolutely.
It's been great to get to know you a little bit. I think it's important for the city of Springfield that you came back to where your roots are to make this happen and to create this kind of welcoming and open space, especially for the youth of Springfield. And it's happening with other events surrounding it. But the parade is this Saturday, June 1st, from Stick to Stern Square.
Yes. And if more information, springfieldprideparade.org. Everything you need to know about this weekend is up there.
Taurean Bethea, the CEO and founder of Springfield Pride Parade, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. This was awesome. Yeah, so cool.
Thanks so much to Taurean Bethea for sitting with us and to Anthony Woodburn, who helped us get that all organized.
Next, we'll bring our ears to the Old Sea with the voice of Herman Melville as interpreted through the research of local historian Wren Wood.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering co-op advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413, Voices of Melville, the linguistic landscape of 19th century America through a literary lens, is a program being held tomorrow, May 29th at 6:30 at the Berkshire Historical Society, whose website is incredibly mobydick.com.
The program is meant to highlight the linguistic landscape that Herman Melville lived in, as well as the tools that linguistics has to offer to learn about what his dialect of English likely sounded like and the 19th century whaling slang he used in his books. The featured speaker at the event is Wren Wood, a linguist and webmaster for the Chicopee Historical Society.
Wren uses maps, statistics, and linguistics to encourage discussion around local history and historic preservation. Prior to moving to Western Mass, they used geographic information systems to study bilingualism and threatened languages in the U.S. They earned a bachelor's in English from Bridgewater State and a master's in Hispanic linguistics from the University of New Mexico. Thanks for once again joining us, Wren.
Glad to be here.
We had you on last year, I think it must have been, when we were talking about the accents of Gilded Age Chicopee.
That is correct.
So you're bringing to life and to sound accents that we can no longer hear, that there were not audio recordings of, seems to be your forte, at least, and I love it.
Yep. There is a little bit of recording. It's just really bad recording.
Yeah.
But this one doesn't have that at all. We're going 100 years before that to listen to Herman Melville. Why did the Berkshire Historical Society want you to bring to life what he sounded like?
They were interested by it because, one, it was a sort of topic they had never really approached before. They had not really, as far as I'm aware, gotten a linguist on board to do this sort of thing. And then my kind of extra pitch to it was I can kind of break it down as in terms of how we actually do this sort of work as linguists. It's not just making it up by the seat of our pants.
I imagine Herman Melville as drunk as a skunk, talking with a slur. No, that's how I would do it. But well, how did you do it? Tell us about how one goes about bringing to life a language that you cannot hear.
So when you don't have recording available to you, what you essentially mainly have to go on is you could go off of poetry, rhyming. However, one thing you have to keep in mind with 19th century poetry is that a lot of the time the rhymes were more based off of what historically rhymed rather than what was actually rhyming in that poet's actual dialect.
Mm-hmm.
So to move on from there, what we do is we find these grammar books, these kind of prescriptive texts where an author is saying how people they should speak in their opinion. Most famous one of these is probably Noah Webster and his, I believe, Blueback Speller, where he outlines, how he thinks people should speak, how he thinks they should spell. And what we can really get out of that is, for example, English today has 5 diphthongs. Those are vowels that you essentially need to combine like 2 vowels to make one sound or one syllable. An example would be bite or bait. What we find when we look in, say, Noah Webster's work is he doesn't treat bait or boat, for example, as being a diphthong. He treats that as just one long sound. So instead of bait, you would have bait. Instead of boat, you would have boat. That's one example we can go with.
Which is interesting because Noah Webster's dictionary is now descriptive rather than prescriptive. It is no longer telling you how to say these things. It is telling you how people are saying these things.
But I think it's also indicative of the many cultures of the time of America coming together to make the sounds of English, because the way that he pronounces that seems very like it might have been pronounced in maybe New York where there's a lot of Dutch immigrants, or at least like in the sound of it, to me, who is not a linguist.
Right. So for this one, I actually tried to find a grammar book that would be from New York City. The one that I found was by this man named Samuel Kirkham. It seems that his grammar book, he called it English Grammar. This was one of the easiest to find because apparently Abraham Lincoln might have learned from this book. So it just worked out that way. And in that one, he gives these side-by-side comparisons of how people in New York and New England were pronouncing words in ways that he didn't like and how he thought they should be pronounced.
Do you have examples of them handy? Or
I do. One of the main one that comes to mind is the difference between heist and hoist. He writes about people confusing the I sound and the oi sound. So what we can kind of get from that is those sounds in the early 1800s were probably a bit closer in terms of how they were produced by the mouth than they are today. So instead of heist, it was probably more something like heist, which is a little bit more central in the mouth rather than the mouth opening wider or the tongue going lower like we would today. And then we have hoist, or in some cases that got actually pushed forward into the center of the mouth to sound like heist as well. And so that made it very easy to confuse those sounds.
We've talked many times with our word nerd from Merriam-Webster now about marry, Mary, and Mary in other parts of the country are all Mary, Mary, and Mary. But we're talking about Herman Melville, and we're talking about the words of Moby Dick with linguist Wren Wood, who will be hosting a talk about this called The Voices of Melville tomorrow at the Berkshire Historical Society.
At the house that Melville used to own, Arrowhead. But
that he may be acquired in a drunken stupor as well?
We don't have to get into that.
But we do want to hear about how he would have sounded.
Yes, and the sailor slang that also might have influenced some of his writing and how he might have come about that.
Because there was a book of poetry that he read called that was inspirational to him. Mocha Dick?
Not a book of poetry, actually. That was from a magazine called The Knickerbocker, which was very popular in 19th century New York. And it has a story about a whale called Matcha Dick.
Matcha, not mocha. I was thinking of like more of a coffee flavored or a contemporary art museum.
This is a whole different tangent we can go on with how mocha and matcha actually come from two totally different language families. But it would take too long. But yeah, it seems that he read this magazine article about this whaling crew's experience trying to capture and spear this whale named Matcha Dick, a sperm whale. Sound familiar if you've read Moby Dick. And he goes so far as to take parts of the whale's name. Dick was just a common sort of generic name for a guy, like calling somebody Jack Frost, for example. It had that same level of just like being generic. So he takes that, and the magazine article itself is very harrowing. Like they talk about just like the effort of trying to move the ship. And that's where a lot of the slang comes in, giving you a sense of scale of the ship that they're on. For example, they reference topgallant sills, which we would today more probably pronounce topgallant sails or topgallant sills. Either one you would hear. And what those are the essentially the sails that are just below the royal sails of a ship. So second to the top, essentially. That tells us that we should be imagining like 3 or 4 different levels of sails on this ship. That's kind of one example of that.
Cool.
Well, Wren Wood, you have a sample that you not one that you'll be reading tomorrow. This is a special Fab 413 exclusive sample of how Herman Melville may have spoken. Is this also from Moby Dick?
This is not from Moby Dick. This is actually some of his poetry, which he was not appreciated at all for in his life or today, I would say.
But he will be right now in his accent brought to life by linguist Wren Wood.
So this poem is Misgivings. When ocean clouds over inland hills sweep storming in late autumn brown, and horror the sodden valley fills, and the spire falls crashing in the town, I muse upon my country's ills. The tempest bursting from the waste of time on the world's fairest hope linked with man's foulest crime. Nature's dark side is heeded now. Ah, optimist cheer disheartened flown. A child may read the moody brow of yon black mountain lone. With shouts the torrents down the gorges go, and the storms are formed behind the storm we feel. The hemlock shakes in the rafter, and the oak in the driving keel.
So cool.
And you're Wren Wood, historian and interpreter of Melville's accent, which will be happening tomorrow at Melville's former home in the Berkshires at the behest of the Berkshire Historical Society. It sounds like you've got like a little bit of a Scottish lilt or almost an English accent in the way that you're reading it. Is that something that would have been common in that era?
So you did have some Scottish immigrants in New York City at the time when Herman Melville was growing up. But I think mainly what we're latching onto there that makes it sound Scottish, for example, is the O sound being made into just one long O. And in some cases, not all, the A sound being made into just one long A. You also have that kind of almost, but not quite, a heist-hoist merger. He had about 7 years of education, so I'm assuming that was based off of the teachers that he had and the quality of education he had, that he would have been taught not to do that. So I think that's where a lot of that is coming from. You also have the fact that he was most likely non-rhotic. He dropped his R's typically, it seems.
Which is something that's common in certain parts of New England to this very day.
We're looking at each other.
Non-rhotic. I love that. Non-Moby-rhotic. Oh, dear.
Really quickly, in this last minute that we have, are there any surprises that you encountered when trying to find the full sound of Herman Melville for this doc?
one of the main surprises was that I was definitely not the first person to ask this question. I went through like 3 biographies about Herman Melville for this, and none of them really go into too much detail, but in 2 of them they have a footnote where they actually interviewed Jack Putnam, who passed away a few years ago. He was a not a Moby Dick reenactor, a Herman Melville reenactor, and he kind of had his own spin on what the sound should be. I didn't go in his direction, though.
Even better.
I want to be a Moby Dick reenactor now. That would be fun. I'll just go into the ocean. A hump like a snow hill.
Oh, my goodness.
Voices of Melville, the linguistic landscape of 19th century America through a literary lens. Tomorrow, May 29th, 6:30 at the Berkshire Historical Society. Wren Wood, Chicopee historian, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Wednesday on the Fabulous 413, should you be afraid of Virginia Woolf's exploration of gender fluidity? Of course not, but you might want to experience it on stage, so we'll talk to the folks from the upcoming production of Orlando, happening at the Shea this week.
And we'll explore wordplay and metaphor in synecdoche and metonymy with word nerd Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster.
And we'll keep picking the asparagus when we hear from the NEPM News Department's Alden Bourne about farmland preservation and farmland succession. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte.
We'll see you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.